Hi, everybody. Welcome to my channel, The Science of Every Bite, where we break down the science behind every meal that we consume, the impact on our health, our guts, and all our all round wellness. Welcome. Well, to kick it off, I want to say a happy new year to everybody. Thank you for joining me today. And what if I told you that our gut bacterial ecosystem is so different from that of our ancestry? And and why is that? Why? Because foods have evolved over time. Food has changed, the processing of foods has changed. There are different types of foods available in the market. And as a result, the story is seen in our gut ecosystem. So, welcome. Today and in our next episode, we'll be looking at foods from the past, the present, and the future. I can boldly say that foods are as old as man, and if probably even older than man. And food consumed in 1,000, 2,000 years ago was consumed more or less in their raw state, and it was consumed based on the availability and seasonality of foods. Foods that were consumed in their raw state, and even when they were processed, they were minimally processed. So there were minimal processing techniques like that were employed, like fermentation, soaking, sprouting, drying, salting, sun drying. All those processing techniques were used to preserve the food integrity and even improve the nutrient bioavailability of the food. Foods that were consumed were things like seeds, nuts, vegetables, tubers, whole grains. All those things were consumed in their more or less raw state. The story of their food, the story of their dietary pattern was actually seen in their guts, in the character and the personality of their gut microbes. Somebody will say, what's gut microbes? Hold on, I'll explain. Gut microbes are a large community of microorganisms that reside in our tummy, basically. In our not tummy, not stomach tummy, but in our guts, in our intestine. And recurrent research have linked this community of microorganisms, bacteria, fungi, viruses to our health and wellness. They are even linked to even longevity of a person. The 70%, 70 to 80% of immunity are from our guts. So we must pay attention to them because they are really important. So the story of the dietary pattern of our ancestry is seen in their guts. Their guts took on a different type of personality, different type of traits, and two unique personality traits in quotes that they had is that number one, they were more diverse. They had different kinds of species of microorganisms. And three most important ones have been lost over time because of the evolution of as our food has evolved. Some of these microorganisms and bacteria have died and become extinct alongside. The first, we don't really need to know all the names, or just know that things like treponema, provetella, all those ones they have been lost over time. And these microorganisms that have been lost are so important in carbohydrate metabolism because number one, they even help in to extract good amounts of energy from carbohydrate foods, and they break down fiber to copious amount of short chain fatty acids. Now, in our coming episodes, as you subscribe to my channel, we'll look at we'll look in depthly at our gut health and nutrition. But just know that these microorganisms are very important to health and wellness. Now, as they have lost a lot of some of as our colon has become less diverse over time, our colon microorganisms have also become they have less transposons. The gut microorganisms of our ancestries had a lot of transposons. I'll break it down for you. Transposons are just jumping genes. Transposons help a gene segment to rearrange itself. Why is that so important today? Why? Because of the high amounts of transposons, they were able to be flexible. They were able to adapt to harsh environments, new types of food, any toxins that they may have encounter in their environment because of high number of transposons. And the transposons were also important because they were able to share. For instance, assuming a group of community a community rather of microorganisms was able to break down, let's say, protein very well and extract good amounts of nutrients from it. But another community of microorganisms did not have that ability. With the aid of transposons, they were able to share. So you see, there was a lot of synergy and communal living in quote amongst the gut microorganisms. They were not necessarily fighting for survival of the fittest. They were sharing their good traits with one another. So that made them very adaptable, made them very flexible. Now, because there's a sharing, so if one community knew how to break down fiber very well, a new type of fiber very well, and another community knew how to break down on that and didn't have that ability and they shared, what happens is that the fiber metabolism increases. As the fiber metabolism increases, they have high levels of short chain fatty acids. Now we know short-chain fatty acids are so important in our gut because they provide like a mucus layer to protect the lining of our gut. So that's why they are really important. So when there's a communal living like that, you have increased amount of nutrient synthesis, increased amount of nutrient bioavailability and extraction from foods, increased amount of carbohydrate metabolism, increased amount of detoxification, and so much more. Well, our transposons always a good thing. We are not all the time. For instance, in our days now that we have less transposons, it's actually it can be a good thing because hear me out, because we have a lot of antibiotics now and a lot of antibiotic resistance now. So can you imagine, for instance, there's a bacteria flying around in the air and there's a particular set of microorganisms that in our gut that have the resistance. They will be able to share amongst other microorganisms that antibiotic resistance ability. So now that less transposons these days, that's one of the reasons why we have high numbers of intestinal disorders. We have high numbers. You see a lot of food intolerances, which were not common in those days because of the high transposons ability in our gut biome. Now, how does that apply to us now? How do we make our gut biome? We're already here. How do we remedy this situation, so to say? There's something called food diversification, food variety. We should be able to eat as much as possible more diverse foods as we can. Then also things like fermented food, which are good custodians of probiotics, fermented sauerkraut, wherever you are in the world, sauerkraut. You have things like yogurt. If you are here, if you are within Africa, they have things like the kuno drinks and all that. So we should try and incorporate all these probiotic rich foods within our diet and less processed foods, because one of the reasons why there's less diversification is because of processing of the foods. Our foods are very low in fiber. Now, if our foods are very low in fiber, there's nothing to digest, there's no fiber content to digest. Over time, they will now see a decline in the food, in the diverse nature of our bacterial ecosystem. So thank you so much, everyone. If you really enjoyed my content, please subscribe to my channel, and next week, so that you can be abreast with all our new content as we dive deep into the science behind every bite. See you next time.